Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you for joining us for day 3 of our virtual Siddiq course, Sidh Gosti. On to day 3, where we are going to be looking at Tavarikh with Jaspreet and Santbir Singh. We're going to look at the history, we're going to look at applications, and we'll delve into some Sakhis as well. Okay. I'm going to turn this over to Jaspreet Kaur and Santbir Singh for our presentation for today. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So we are so excited to be here to do our day 3 of the course on Sidh Gosti with you all. We were tuned in for part 1 and part 2 and love learning from our peers and have a lot of respect for the facilitators that came before us. And we're very excited to build on their content. Thank you for the introduction, and also for there's information put about us in the side. We're both also students of Siddiq. So we've been through the courses and we've been working with Sikh Research Institute, and now we have the opportunity to give back and to share some of our journey and our knowledge with you all. I also wanted to share that because we are tuning in from Toronto, Ontario, we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas. I know there are folks from different parts in the world. What we call Canada today was built through genocide and colonization on the land of people who have been here for the original people who were here on this land for thousands of years. So as a part of our family's commitment and our commitment as educators, and the calls from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, we incorporate Indigenous education into our teaching, and we make sure that we are actively decolonizing the land that we're on. So we make sure that we start with a land acknowledgement, and we also build on that in everything we do. My pronouns are she and her.
He, him.
So if you want to refer to us at any time, like you can say, Jaspreet Kaur, she said this, and things, he said that. Yeah, and I think any other intro things? Okay.
So we're going to start off with doing the Hokam Nama reflection, just like Surinder Bal and Saprit did yesterday. And the Hokam is from Sri Darbar Sahib, Harmandir Sahib, and it was a Hokam from this morning. And Guru Sahib Ji blessed us with a Hokam from Sorash Rag. And if you see at the top there, it says Mahalla Panjwa. And Mahalla Panjwa means that it's from the 5th Guru Nanak, which is Guru Arjan Sahib Ji. This Shabad is a very short one. It's what we would call a Dopada. It is 2 lines plus a Rahau line. So you'll see there the 1 for the first stanza, the first Pauri, the 2 for the second Pauri, and the Rahau Pauri has its own end there. So it's really a very short Shabad, and because it's so short, I thought that we could actually spend a few minutes going through it line by line. You can go to the next slide.
Yeah, sure.
So we're going to start with the Rahau line, and the Rahau line is Haras Pivaho Pai, Naam Japo Namo Aradho Gurpure Ki Saranai. So this is an ongoing theme in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, an ongoing theme in Sikhi, and that is the theme of connecting with Naam. Guru Arjan Sahib Ji here is giving us a farman, a hukam, and the hukam is, he is asking us, or he is telling us to jap Naam and to arad Naam, arado. Arado means to concentrate on, to connect with, to make a relationship with. Har ras pivo pai. Har ras. Now, ras is a word that some of us may be familiar with. It is a word that means juice or extract or the concentrate of something. Here we're talking about the ras of Hari. Now, Had is a word for Vaheguru, the most popular word for Vaheguru in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, actually. And it's a word for Vaheguru that means ever living, always alive, always present. So Guru Arjan Sahib Ji is asking us to drink Pivo, so that's to drink the ras of Hari. And he's calling us his sibling. He's saying Pai here, but of course, when we're thinking about it in gender neutral terms, this is a call out to all Sikhs, or to anybody reading Guru Granth Sahib Ji, female, male, or any other gender. So Guru Sahib Ji is saying, Haras Pivo Pai, oh my sibling, drink in the ras of the ever-living Vaheguru. So that's the first line there. The second line, Nam Japoho Namo Aradho Gurupure Ki Saranai. The idea of Pura is a really powerful and important concept in Sikhi. What is Pura? What is perfect? What is whole? And there are very few things that are whole according to Guru Granth Sahib Ji. In fact, there's only two things that are whole according to Guru Granth Sahib Ji, two things that we can call perfect, that don't have any parts that are missing. And one is Vaheguru and the other is Guru. So the Guru is perfect. Guru Pure Ki Saranai. And Saranai is a word that means in the presence of. So if we break this down, Guru Pure Ki Saranai, in the presence of the perfect Guru. The Saranai doesn't just mean presence, so there are connotations there of protection, that you're in the presence, you're being protected by the Guru. And we see this idea even in our physical devars as well, because a lot of the metaphors of Bani have been made physical by the Guru Sahibs over time, so that the metaphor is really stuck with us. And if we look at Guru Granth Sahib Ji and the way that Guru Granth Sahib Ji is maintained, the way that Guru Granth Sahib Ji is presented to the world, that there are always shastras, for example, in front of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, so that when we come into the Sangat, the Darshan, the Darbar, the Divan of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, we feel protected because we know our Guru is a powerful Guru, a strong Guru, a Guru that can take care of us, that can look over us, that can protect us. So all of those ideas are in this line here, that you are in the presence of a perfect Guru that can take care of you, that can maintain you, that can hold you, that can keep you steady and whole. Sahib, this is the first line of the Hukamnama. And sorry, I forgot to explain earlier. When we look at a hukam, when we're translating a hukam or explaining a hukam, we go by the Rahau line first, because the Rahau line is sort of the essence of the Shabad, and then we go through and look at the rest of the lines. So we've done the Rahau line, now let's go back to the first line of the Shabad. Sarb Sukha Ka Data Satgur, Taki Sarni Paiye. Sarb Sukha Ka Data. Sukha is a word which means contentment, which means good things, feeling good. Sarb means all. So all those good and positive things, they come from the Datta, from Vaheguru Sahib Ji. And this Datta is the Satguru, the true Guru. And we use the word Sat in Bani quite a lot, but I want to really break down, what does it mean to be Sat? For something to be true, it means that it must always exist as it is today. If I say, this is a computer, but one day this computer will break down and be a piece of garbage and be recycled, and it won't be a computer anymore. So when I make the statement, this is a computer, it's not a statement that lasts forever. It's not a true statement. It's only true in this transitionary period. The only thing that is always true, that never ever stops being true, that is true throughout all ages and all time, is the Guru and Vaheguru. And so the Satguru, Taki Sarni Paiye. So again, just like the Rahau line, to go into the saran of Guru, of the true Guru, to take upon that presence. Darshan petat hot ananda, dukh gya har gaye. When you do, now we've talked yesterday about how darshan, how the word originally meant philosophy. Now, many times in Bani, it actually refers to the way that we commonly refer to it today, which means in the presence of or the sight of. So in the sight or the presence of the Guru, you get Anand. And remember that Anand, for those of you who aren't familiar with that concept, is not just happiness, because happiness, by its very definition, means that there's an opposite of happiness. There is a sadness. And that anything that when you feel happy, eventually you'll go down and you'll feel sad. And we have these waves throughout our lives of up and down. Ananda is not a wave. Ananda is higher beyond those emotions. It is contentment. It is a satisfaction that goes beyond just mere contentment. Now, dukh gaya har gaye. How does pain go away? Dukh is pain, dukh, right? Many of us know that word. Gaya means to go. Har, remember, refers to Vaheguru. Gaye means to sing. So what do we sing? We sing kirtan. We sing the praises of Vaheguru. And through the singing the praises of Vaheguru, our pain is diminished. Now, I want you to think about something very important here. Who revealed this Bani? This Bani was revealed by Tan Sahib Guru Arjan Sahib Ji, who perhaps suffered more than any other person in history when he was sat upon the Tatti Tavi and he had boiling hot sand poured on top of his body. Guru Arjan Sahib Ji suffered incredible amounts of physical pain, and yet here he is saying, Dukh gaya har gaye, that if you do kirtan of Vaheguru, your dukh will be taken away. That's something to think about. What is the dukh that Guru Arjan Sahib Ji is talking about? How is that dukh removed? And is that dukh related to physical dukh that we might feel on a day-to-day basis? What is the relationship there? If we could go to the last slide. Tiship Rapat just Tora Likhya. Tora, for many of you will know, means from the beginning. And in Bani, it means from Vaheguru, or from the court of Vaheguru. So Tiship Rapat, those who have this gift, those who have received this gift of Hari's Naam, of Vaheguru Naam, that gift was given according to the precondition that it was already decided for them. Tora Likhya, Soi Puran Pai, and those people are the ones who will be perfect. Well, then this brings up a really interesting issue. If it's all preordained, and then does it matter if we make an effort or not? Does it matter if we make an attempt to be Guru-like, if we sing the Kirtan of Vaheguru? What does it matter if it was all written before, if it was all Tora Likhya? And the thing is that in Sikhi, there is the combination of the two. That there's an idea like in Asa ki baar apan hathi apna ape hi kaj savariye, that through your own hands you can make your own destiny. At the same time, what you are destined to do is pre-written by Vaheguru. So all you can do is make the effort, constantly make the effort, like it says in Japji Sahib, make the effort by the sweat of your brow in order to try to connect with Vaheguru. Whether you are going to connect or not, that's out of your control. But the effort is in your control. And when effort meets kirpa, then you get perfection. Soi Puran Pai. Guruji is saying, oh my siblings, then you become perfect. So this is a really powerful idea. I started off saying only two things are perfect, Guru and Vaheguru. But Guru Arjan Sahib Ji is saying, no, there is a third thing that is perfect. My Sikh can be perfect as well. My Sikh can be perfect as well. If my Sikh becomes so Guru-like that there's no distinction between Guru and Sikh, then my Sikh is also Puran. Nanak ki benanti Prabhuji, Naam raha live lai. So in the last line, Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is saying, to always stay connected. Live means connection, concentration on the Naam. To Guruji's own personal ardas, Nanak ki binanti, not our ardas. When we read it, we make it our own. But Guru Arjan Sahib Ji said, my ardas is that may I always be connected, live, meri live lagi Naam dinal, that my live will be connected to Naam. So that's Guru Arjan Sahib Ji's Nimrata filled ask of Vaheguru to be connected to the Naam of Vaheguru.
Okay, so we're going to ask that you take this a little bit further than just understanding the Shabd. This is the Hukamnama we chose from Darbar Sahib. This is one that's issued to the entire Panth. There are different ones that you can take. If you have your own Maharaj Prakash, you can read a random Shabd online. There's different ways that you can do it. The one that's issued to the Panth, we have our Panthic lives, we have our personal lives, we have our political lives, we have our spiritual lives. Sikhi shows us over and over again that those are not binary, they're not dichotomies, that they're one and the same. When we look at Darbar Sahib, there are Shastar in Harmandir Sahib, there's Maharaj Prakash in Akal Takht. They have different, the two centers have different functions, but they're not mutually exclusive. So when we are issued Hukamnama from Darbar Sahib, it's not just Panthic and political and for everyone, it's also deeply personal, and the personal is also political, and we are to apply it. So if this is what's coming from the mouth of Guru Arjan Dev Ji for us this morning, how do we apply it? And how do we take this as we go through the next few hours to look at the Bani that we're going to be exploring? In this Hukamnama, if you look, we went through it piece by piece, and if you start by looking at the first couple of lines, Sarb Sukhan ka data Satgur Tanki Sarni Paiya Darsan Petat Hot Ananda Dukh Gaya Har Gaya, we are explaining what Vaheguru is. In the Rahul line, it's a very literal hukam. It's an instruction. Har ras pivo pai, naam japo, namo arado, gurpure ki saranai. It's pretty straightforward. Drink that har ras, jap that naam, make sure that naam is in your heart, do these things. And then the last couple of lines are very much like, oh, but by the way, you can only do those things if it's part of your destiny that comes from the beginning, from the Tavarikh. It's like preordained. Which you would be like, why would Guru Arjan Dev Ji do that? Why would Guru Arjan Dev Ji be like, here's your hukam for the day, Haras Pivo, Nam Japo, do these things. And then in the very next line, he would be like, but only those people who have it from the beginning can do those things. The last line says, Nanak ki bin nanti prabji naam raha live life. It's a benti, it's an ardas that I should be able to do those things that I'm being commanded to do. We have the destiny that we bring into this world and the destiny that's with us from the source. And we also always have the ability to do ardas and to do benti.
And the Guru has the power to erase our destiny as well.
Absolutely. And
to transform it. So that's part of that benti, that ardas of, I want to, even if it's not in my destiny to connect with you, Vaheguru, please make it my destiny to connect.
If we were an in-person Siddiq, we would start with the hukam at the beginning of the day and check in again at the end of the day. So I'm going to give you homework, personal homework. Take this intention with, I know some people are in the beginning of their day, some are in the middle, and some might be at the latter end of their day. But take this hukam and check in with yourself before you go to sleep. Did I use this guiding force throughout my day? So we can get very, very caught up in translating Bani. What does it mean to drink hadas? What does it mean to nam japa? What does it mean to have darshan? Or you can take it very literally. Bani is for foolish people like us who need to be hit over the head with the truth. So just think about what these things mean for you. How are you going to do them? Check in at the end of the day. Did I do them? So moving on, this is what the Sidh Gosti part of today is going to look like. We are the Sikhi triad of ways that we always understand things in Sikhi are through the lens of Bani, Tavarikh, and Granth. So we have the responsibility of helping explain the religious, political, and historical subtext of the Bani. We are going to, in this little bit, consider who is a Gurmukh, how can a Gurmukh be both religious and political, and how can the Gurmukh who is the symbiotic, how to become the Gurmukh who is the symbiotic of the spiritual and political. Need for longer sleep. Yes, being tired can definitely make you feel disconnected. Money, beauty, and power, trying to fit in. Let me check. No, what's this one? Don't feel I belong. Yes. Not keeping body hair over the summer. Absolutely. Comparing ourselves to others, for sure. Language and cultural differences, absolutely. I think I heard that from the Benji that didn't speak Punjabi as a native language. Anger, definitely feel disconnected when I'm angry. That's a real one. Oh, can get overwhelmed by how abstract Gurbani is. Yes. Needing to accomplish a task. Absolutely. If I have pending work, if I have something that needs to be done, I can't focus on other things. I think that's most of them. Thank you all for being brave enough to share all of these. I know that we can't see who's posting what, but to have the conversations and to be honest with yourself and with group members in your breakout rooms, that's really, that takes vulnerability and it takes a certain kind of strength. So I certainly appreciate that. And I want you to just take a look at this, because what we're going to be talking about is that binary of spiritual and political. We're going to be talking about being in the world, of the world, outside of the world. We're going to look at how Guru Nanak Dev Ji constructed a path and how the Siddhs constructed a path, and how Guru Nanak Dev Ji said all of these things that we're talking about, Netflix, social media, judgment from others, sleep, eating, body hair, to-do lists. Guru Nanak Dev Ji proposed that this is the better path. This world and being in the world that has all of these things is the right path. We're going to break down the Bani that explains that, but just to take this in as a whole and be like, wait, what is Guru Nanak Dev Ji talking about? How can this possibly be better? Wouldn't it be easier to unplug all of my devices and go sit in a forest and eat mushrooms, and not drug mushrooms, I mean foraging, eat what you can forage from the forest floor, and give up money and give up grist and all of that? Wouldn't that be easier? And look at this, and look at the revolutionary Guru Nanak Dev Ji saying, nope, I know what I'm talking about. This is the one, this is the path. Okay, and so for the second, if you just go to the top of your screen and go to the second part of the jam board, can you please share what your time is when you feel connected? And while we wait for those answers to come in, do you want to share a time that you feel? I feel like we're doing like a morning talk show. What's a time you feel connected?
I think getting up in Amrit Vela when at a Gurmukh camp and being part of like doing Nityam together, I always find that to be quite powerful.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have Amrit Vela in nature, camps with my family, Sangat, when I'm alone, specific Kirtan, reading or listening to Gurbani and Sikh history, driving and listening to Kirtan Katha podcast. This is great because the driving in traffic was on the disconnected side, and the driving and listening to Kirtan and Kathan podcast is on the connected side, and I can relate to both. The driving in traffic stresses me out so much, and like going on a good long drive, and that's actually one of the best times I find to like, that's how I learn and take in information, and absolutely listening to Kirtan and Katha works at that time. Okay. These are amazing. These are beautiful. Oh, we got some more coming in. Learning spaces with deep talk, with Benjis that inspire me. Those cry or thus moments. Yes. Yes, I've definitely had some of those. Okay, I'm just gonna wait a few more seconds, see if there's any others coming in. Oh yeah, there are some other coming in. When impressed, like different moods and rag can be used in backgrounds of to do tasks. Yes, absolutely. When you have different, a certain rag, a certain note, a certain way a dorba is played, it can totally bring you like, everything feels like it's in sync in that moment, and you feel incredible and you feel connected. All right. So those are reflections. And we're gonna jump into looking at the actual history. But before we get into this part, I'm gonna add just one more thing. There are a lot of different ways that we can connect to Bani. And the Bani that we are working on this week is a really incredible, and it's an incredible Bani, and there are a lot of different ways to connect to Bani. For me personally, I think being in the physical presence of Gurbani is very powerful. It's why I matha tek. Like, I'm not actually reading the Bani when I'm matha taking, just the physical presence of Guru Granth Sahib Ji means a lot to me. It's why I feel different when I read from a Gurkha than when I read from a phone or when I'm listening. So there's that physical connection I have with Bani. There's listening to Bani. There's when you read it, there's a way to connect with it. There's when you internalize it, you connect with it in a different way. When you work on it for pronunciation, when you do Santhya, you connect with the Bani in a different way. When you do line by line interpretations, when you do transcreations, that's a really powerful way to connect with Bani. And what we're doing in this week is when you interpolate, when you extrapolate, when you add Sakya, when you take out themes, this is a completely different way of understanding a Bani. I would encourage folks, and I know we sent this link out at the beginning of the week as well. We sent a link to an audio for Sidh Gosti. If you, wherever you are on your journey, my ask is that you, in addition to what we're doing this week, please engage with the Bani on as many levels as you can. Please listen to it every day. If you can read Gurmukhi, read it every day. If you want to do the line by line translations, Sikhi has a full course. You can just Google Sikhi course Sidh Gosti. Sundar Viji, who you had teaching you yesterday, will guide you through it's so beautifully done. We'll guide you through every single line and what it means. This is in the process of preparing to teach this. Santbir Singh and I went through all of these different phases, and like we listened to it on repeat. We tried to do it as many days as we could, like actually read it ourselves. We learned from SP Viji. We learned there's recordings of Hrinder Viji explaining it, all of the different ways. And then I would like wake up in the middle of the night and like one of the lines would be running through my head. And I would be like, oh, like there would be just that one line of Sidh Gosti that would stick out, and I would be like, how am I supposed to see Vaheguru in everyone? And then the next day it would be like Hati Bati Re Nirali, like it'd be a completely different line, and it was building a relationship with that Bani, and that's the way I describe it. So the most powerful thing you can do with Bani is to not have anyone stand between you and your Guru, for you to build that relationship by yourself. Do that in addition to what we're doing this week. be in the physical presence of the Barney, listen to the track we sent you, look at the other courses that we have on this. Anything that you can do, even if you just listen to the track every day, make sure you do that in addition to what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to ask Santbir Singh to explain this next part.
So what we're going to do right now actually is we are going to do a little bit of history. There's two parts of the history today. One part of the history is looking at examples from Sikh history of Gur Sikhs that really exemplify that balance that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is talking about in Sidh Gosti. And the other part of the history is just a basic history of Sidh Gosti itself. And so what we're going to do over these two slides, just in the next couple of minutes, is look at the history of Sidh Gosti. So we've talked about the background of Sidh Gosti and the background of yoga. Yesterday, Surinder Pal Singh went over the history of yoga and the sort of philosophy behind yoga. On Guru Nanak Sahib Ji's travels, Guru Nanak Sahib Ji went to the religious centers of many different traditions. He went to Makkah and Medina and Baghdad, where he engaged in discussions with Muslim scholars. And he also went to Benares, where he engaged in, and Hardwar, where he engaged in discussions with Pandits and Brahmins. And he also engaged with the yogic teachers, which was what Sidh Gosti is. And so Sidh Gosti is a very unique Bani in that it captures the conversation that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji had. This conversation may have happened in multiple places. So there's three places that are mentioned in historical sources. The first is Gorakh Mata, which is now called Nanak Mata. The second is Sumer Parbat or Meru Parbat, which is a mountain high up in the Himalayas. And the last is a place in northern Punjab called Achal Batala. So those are the three different places where Sidh Gosti either happened or happened at all three of them. And for Guru Nanak Sahib Ji's life, we have books or traditions called Janm Sakhiyan. And there's 5 major Janm Sakhi traditions. There's a Pratan, Paibala, Meherban, and Bayemi Singh Janm Sakhi. And then the 5th one is the Pai Gurdas Ji, first Var of Pai Gurdas Ji's Vara. And all of those have different information, and sort of the ideas that we have about Guru Nanak Sahib Ji's life are sort of taken bits and pieces from all of these different Janm Sakhis. The most authentic source, according to Sikhs, is Pai Gurdas Ji, because he was a Sikh of Guru Ram Das Ji, Guru Arjan Sahib Ji, Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji. He wrote the first copy of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. He's really the first scholar in Sikhi, very well respected. His Bani has been approved by Guru Arjan Sahib Ji. So where he tells us that it took place, that's the most authentic. And he says that this discussion took place in 2 places. Once during the Udasis at Sumer Parbat, and once after the Udasis at Achal Batala. So after Guru Nanak Sahib Ji had settled at Kartarpur, then he went and had another discussion with the Siddhs at their headquarters in Punjab at Batala. So just to give you a quick map of the areas we're talking about, you can see that Nanak Mata, which used to be called Gorakh Mata, and Sumer Parbat are in the mountains. Nanak Mata is more in the foothills. Sumer Parbat is like really up in the Himalayas, and Achal Batala is up in northern Punjab area. So all 3 of these are places that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji would have traveled to during his Udasis. He would have traveled to Nanak Mata and Sumer Parbat on his 2nd Udasi. So Guru Nanak Sahib Ji had 4 Udasis that he traveled on. And Achal Batala he would have gone to after his 4th Udasi, when he had come back to Punjab and set up the town of Kartarpur. So that's a very basic history of Sidh Gosti, of where these discussions as Gosti took place between Guru Nanak Sahib Ji and the Siddhs and these yogis. And Guru Sahib Ji at a later time revealed this Bani and incorporated into the revelation the discussion that he had with the yogis. So this isn't a word for word, like a court reporter writing down exactly the discussion as it happened. This is Guru Nanak Sahib Ji after the fact revealing the Bani.
Okay, so we're going to look at and I want you to carry your personal reflections through this. What did the Sidh say about worldly things that pull us away from Vaheguru? How did Guru Nanak Dev Ji respond? And how would you apply this to the things that you've named that pull you away from Vaheguru? So a reminder for the context, when you start to read the Bani, it's, as Santbir mentioned, Guru Nanak Dev Ji has these experiences, and SPVG mentioned yesterday as well, it could be revealed at the time, it could have been revealed after. It's not a literal, it's not transcribing, oh, you said this, then I said this. It's Bani, it's a divine revelation. So it's taking the summary of what happened and explaining it in Bani. These things, why Guru Nanak Dev Ji would want us to have these conversations is an important question. And when you go through it, when you start to hear what some of the Sidh's questions are, they're we have today. And so it's really great and really cool that Guru Nanak Dev Ji gave us the answers. When the Bani starts, you see all of the Sidhs are gathered, Guru Nanak Dev Ji sets a scene, they're sitting there, and then they just start to, they're like, who are you? Where do you come from? They're very condescending. They call him a boy. They call him Bale, as PBG explained yesterday. And they're like, answer us this, why are you dressed like this? Where are you going? And Guru Nanak Dev Ji, at some points, he's like, Ape aake ape samjhe, tis kya uttar dijiye. Like, you have the answers. Why am I going to mess with you? Why am I going to argue with you? You already know, you're asking me questions you already know the answers to. So there's some times when they'll say something and Guru Nanak Dev Ji will be like, no, you're only asking me to like test me, to challenge me. You already know the answers. There'll be times when they ask a question and they get an answer. There'll be times when they ask a question and the answer will be like, just accept it, just be in awe of it. There are times where they'll ask a question and Guru Nanak Dev Ji will go off into a very large explanation. So so it starts with setting the scene where they're all gathered and they're talking, and then it goes back and forth in this question, answer. And that's what the Bani is. It's really cool. It's really engaging. It's a really great way to learn. And again, when you build that relationship with the Bani, that's when you'll actually be able to tell the difference. This is when the Sidhs are talking, and this is when Guru Nanak Dev Ji is talking. Shout outs to SPVG for sharing these translations with us, and for putting in all the work and for understanding and sharing. And so when you see the English, that's what we're sharing there, and the Gurmukhi is on the top. So I got to pick which one of these I wanted to share in trying to explain how Guru Nanak Dev Ji says that we are not supposed to exist in isolation. We're supposed to exist in the world. So I felt like this was a good place to start. And this is in the voice of the Sidhs. This is all revealed by Guru Nanak Dev Ji. It's the summary, but this is the part where they are talking, and then I'll share the part where Guru Nanak Dev Ji is talking. They say, they're explaining their way of life. Hati bati dehe nirale rukh birk udyane kandamul aharo khaye odu bole gyane. So the Yog's way, disagreeing with the Guru's view, they say hati bati. So hati bati could like literally mean roads, highways, stores. Professor Sahib Singh translate as Milyam Sadyam, and then when we were talking about it, we decided that a good English would be to say hustle bustle. So it's talking about like staying away from the like urban areas, the cities, the hustle bustle of the world, the stores and highways. Stay away from all of that. Hati bati rehe nirale, rukh birk udyane. Stay away from all of that. Kandamul aharo khaye, Audu bole gyane. Audu, we learned that word, is referring to the Siddhs. Gandamul aharo khaiye. So we're going to eat things that we forage for. And that's what they're saying through their wisdom, through their gyan. So they're saying this is the lifestyle. Stay away from everything. Go to the forest. Live by yourself, away from the hustle bustle of the world. Eat what you can find on the floor. Tirathanaye, sokhafala paiye, mel na lage kai, Gurmukh Loharipa bole, jog jugat bedasai. So to do you take your baths, your pilgrimages, Tirathanaye, sokhafala paiye. That's how you attain that fruit of happiness, and you will not have any dirt that comes near you. You won't be dirty, you'll be pure if you take these baths. Gurmukh Loripa bole. So this is, Loripa is speaking, and he is a disciple of Gurmukh, and he's saying that this is Jog Jugat Bidasai. This is the way that you're going to achieve the yoga. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji actually says that's not going to work. So
this is Guru Nanak Sahib's response now to the yogis.
Yeah. So hati bati, there's that term again. So the stores, highways, hustle bustle of the world. Neend na ave, par kar chit na dolai. So stay in that world. Stay in the hustle bustle of the world, and don't get numb, don't get immune, don't fall asleep. Don't just like what I was describing when I do my bot and I'm too worried about my list and I don't even remember, like, did I do this bunny already? Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying you have to stay in the hustle bustle of the world and you can't fall asleep. You can't go numb. But don't let your mind go to someone else's house. Because this is a really interesting thing that the Siddhs did. They gave up homes and they gave up women, money, hustle, bustle, but it wasn't their own. They were giving up like other people's women. They were giving up other people's houses. And those were the things they were framing as temptations. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying to us, like, don't look to your neighbor, don't look at other people's homes, and don't get sucked into comparison. I think I saw judgment come up there.
Yeah, I think when people were talking about what took them away from Vaheguru Sahib Ji, a lot of that was social interactions in some way or another.
Yes.
Was comparison with other people, comparing either through social media or just through real life, or judgment of other people. And Guru Nanak Sahib is saying here very clearly, don't get mixed up in other people's houses. Don't compare yourself to other people.
Yeah. Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, "Bin nave man tek na tikai, nanak bhukh na jai." So without that naam, your mind is not going to settle, and that hunger that you have is not actually going to go away. Okay. So this is Haat Patan Kar Guru Dikhaya Sahaje Sach Vaparo Khandat Nindra Alap Aharam Nanak Tat Vicharo. Okay. So the Guru has shown me Vaheguru within Haat Patan Kar Guru Dikhaya, within the market, the shop, and the home. Sahaje Sach Vaparo. So all those things, remember the first Jamboard? All those things that were, I'm actually going to let me see if I can pull it up. Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying that in the hustle bustle of the world, in all of these things, I have seen Vaheguru. Haat patan kar Guru dikhaya, sahaje sach vaparo, khandat nindra alap aharam, Nanak tat vicharo. Nanak, consider the essence that instinctively brings out less eating and less sleep. So I'm going to pull up some vocab words. Khandat, kiti hoi, alap, and thodi. So khandat is less, nindra is sleep, alap is thodi, so a little bit, aharang, that would be food. So you're eating less and you're sleeping less, and that's what I think. Sleeping a lot was on one of the slides. Totally relatable, but not Guru Nanak Dev Ji saying this is what the truth is. Okay, and so then how to do real jog, and then we get into a series of questions that they are asking Guru Nanak Dev Ji as well. I'm just going to pull up my translations on my own screen as well. Okay, so then they're asking Guru Nanak Dev Ji, Kavan Mool, Kavan Matvela, Tera Kavan Guru, Jiska Tu Chela. So what was the start of the world, the origin of the world? What was the time? Who is your Guru? And who are you a disciple of? Kavan Katha Le Rohon Narale, Bole Nanak, Suno Tambale. Taking what instructions, what do you hear that you stay different from everyone? Bole Nanak Suno Tambale. Says Nanak, listen, oh boy. Okay, so then Guru Nanak Dev Ji, there's another line from them. Ehe katha ka deh bichar, pavjal sabd lingavan har. Give us your opinion of this understating through what shabad, that through the shabd is capable of taking across. Okay, and then Guru Nanak Dev Ji's response, and I think this is one of those places where you get quite a correlation, like almost a line by line correlation. So they asked, Kavan Mool, Kavan Matvela. What was the start and what was the time? And Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, Pavan Aramb, Satgur Matvela. So the air was there at the beginning, and Satgur Matvela, true Guru, the understanding was the time. And then they had asked, Tera Kavan Guru Jiska Tu Chela, who's your Guru, who are you a disciple of? And again, a direct answer, almost line by line, Sabad Guru. So Shabad is my Guru, Surt Ton Chela. And my consciousness is the disciple. Their question was, Kavan Katha Le Rohon Nirale, what's the speech? What's the katha that helps you stay nirale? And again, direct answer, Akat Katha Le Rohon Nirale. So that thing, sorry, Nirala, that's the Akat Katha is like the katha, the spoken that can't be spoken, the inexpressible. Nanak Jog Jog Gur Gopala. Nanak in each age is the Guru Nourisher. And then they had said, Es Katha Ka Deo Bicharo, Es Katha Ka De Bichar, and the Nanak Dev Ji says, Ek Sabd Jit Katha Vichari, that there's only the one Shabd, Gurmukh Home Agana Nivari. So staying Guru-oriented, the fire of ego is. Okay, so they're asking, Main ke dant kyun khaiye sar? I know in the preview G is going to talk about tomorrow, this idea of how iron can be chewed with teeth of wax. Jit garab jai so kavan ahar. What can you eat that eliminates pride? Hive ka kar mandar agan pirahan. Hive ka kar, so having a house of snow, mandar Hive ka kar mandar agan pirahan, and a dress of fire, kavan gufa jit rahe avahan, which is that cave that stays unshaken. I mean, it's really interesting because how can you have something made of fire in a home that's made of snow? That answer is coming up as well. It ut kisko jaan samave, kavan dhyan man mano samave. It ut kisko jaan samave. Realizing whom here and there should one absorb in, by what meditation the mind may absorb in itself. And these are the answers that Guru Nanak Dev Ji gives. Main vichon khove, duja mete eko hove. From the self, one should lose pride and ego, erase the other, and become one. Jag karda man mukh gawar, sabd kamaye khaiye sar. The world is hard for the self-centered fool. Earning shabd, the one eats iron. So that iron metaphor you're going to go into tomorrow. Antar bahar eko jane. If one realizes that inside and outside there is the same. Nanak agan mare satgur ke pane. Nanak, fire dies out, staying in the will of the Guru. So this one was, if you think about how the idea of the house of fire I thought was really beautiful.
House of Snow.
Sorry, house of snow, and then trying to have fire within the house of snow. Guru Nanak Dev Ji brings us back to antar bahar ek ho jane. If you understand that those dichotomies are not real, the inside and the outside are not separate. I'm gonna let that pass. Sorry, we live on the major Toronto road. If you realize that the inside and the outside are not separate and that those dichotomies are not real, if you accept that fire and you die in that acceptance, you'll be okay. And if my mind is on fire and I'm trying to contain it in myself, and I feel like I'm going to melt this house, I'm going to destroy everything I have just because, so in my example, it was the to-do list. It's go, 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 and it feels so pressing, and there's so much pending work, and I can't focus. Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying that if you accept that fire, and if you die in that fire, you no longer have this dichotomy, you no longer have this worry of I'm going to take this house down with me, because it's going to keep going. All of the stuff that you talked about, the solution isn't that it's going to disappear. We're not going to get rid of people's judgment. We're not going to get rid of to-do lists. We're not going to get rid of social media. But if we accept it and understand it, it's almost like a wave that you can ride out. You can just watch it and let it go and be okay.
Now we're going to go on to one of the major themes of Sidh Gosti, which is the Gurmukh, the person who is Guru-oriented. So in the last couple of lines that Jaspreet just went over, how do I go backwards?
Scroll up. Sorry.
Jag karada man mukh javad, that the world is hard only for that person who is self-oriented. If you are Guru-oriented, then this world is not a difficult. So that's a pretty powerful and big idea, because the world is full of issues and problems for everybody. Everybody has family problems, everybody has work issues, everybody has money issues. And we can look at the lives of the Guru Sahibs and see that all of the types of problems that we face in our own lives, the Gurus faced as well. The Gurus faced issues with bad relatives, with children that didn't listen to them. Guru Arjan Sahib Ji had his brother stealing money from him. Him and Mata Gangaji used to weave baskets just to get by because Priti Chand was stealing all the money from the Golak. There's all these different issues that we face. The Gurus face the same types of issues. But what Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is saying here is that the world is only difficult if you are self-oriented. If you are Guru-oriented, if you are Gurmukh, then the world is not difficult. Then if you are Gurmukh, you can eat iron. And what eating iron represents is that it's an impossible task. How do you eat iron with regular teeth, let alone teeth made out of wax? Well, you can't do it. It's not physically possible. So being a Gurmukh allows you to do that which is not possible. It allows you to do the impossible. So that's what we're going to be talking about next. Who is a Gurmukh? And we're going to look at a couple of, or one pori in particular, and just at a few different lines within that pori. Gurmukh pavjal tariye sach suddhi. Pavjal is the world ocean. Tariye means to cross over or to be saved from or to pass through. Sach suddhi, with the awareness of such. How do you cross over the world ocean? The Gurmukh is able to do it because they are aware of the truth. And how are they aware of the truth? Because Gurmukh sar apsar bid jane. The Gurmukh is able to discriminate between right and wrong, what we call in Sikhi Vivek Buddhi, the ability to discern between right actions and wrong actions. So in Sikh history, Sikhs have always had a very strong moral compass, and they've been very uncompromising on that. They know this is wrong behavior and we cannot allow it to happen, and this is correct behavior and we must help it to occur. And throughout Sikh history, Sikhs have given up their lives for that, for the attempt to stop bad actions and to perform good actions. That's something that Gursikhs have been willing to die for. So the Guru-oriented is able to discriminate between right and wrong. And that's, of course, something that all of us would like to be able to get to, a place where we can do that. Because oftentimes we're in situations where we're like, what do we do in the situation? What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? And sometimes the answer is not very clear. I really like this line, the way that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji has worded it. Gurmukh-Guru-oriented narvirt pachane. Parvirt narvirt. So the Gurmukh is able to recognize both worldliness and detachment. And this is one of the big themes in Sidh Gosti, which Guru Nanak Sahib Ji tries to impress upon the yogis again and again. And what really Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is telling us, right? Because this Bani is not for yogis, this Bani is for us. And Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is saying again and again, be a yogi, but don't be a yogi removed from society, be a yogi in society. Be someone who is connected and disconnected. Connected in that their social relationships, they're able to interact with other people, they're able to communicate, to have business, family, all these types of relationships, but at the same time that they are detached from it as well.
And it's interesting because it's not a prescription. It's not, Guru Nanak Dev Ji doesn't say this is, so parvirt is Granth, nirvirt is tyag. So what you're going to be attached to and what you're going to denounce, it's not a list that Guru Nanak Dev Ji has given us where you're like, the Gurmukh knows that you're going to be involved in business, family, and you're going to tyag, you're going to renounce 1, 2, and 3. What Guru Nanak Dev Ji says is that a true Gurmukh understands and recognizes which ones you take on and which ones you denounce, which requires like active thinking, critical thinking, engaging with Barney, and that answer is going to be for you, and you're going to check it and balance it against Barney because you'll understand and recognize.
Thank you for that. Yeah,
because we see that, like we see people who we see even with the gurus that they engage in politics, in business, have money, run cities, and then those same things in a different capacity they reject and They're critical of. Yeah.
And rejection of I like to use this as an example of Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji, but what it means to be disconnected. Because being disconnected in a Sikhi sense doesn't mean that you don't care about people. It doesn't mean that you're not concerned about people. It doesn't mean that you are aloof from people's daily lives and struggles. It means quite the opposite. It means that you are fully engaged with all people at the same amount. And what does that mean? That looks like Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji leaving Chamkaur Sahib and coming across the body of Baba Ajit Singh. And Bayemi Singh saying to Guru Sahib in that pitch dark night after that hard fought battle, Bayemi Singh whispering to Guru Sahib, we should cover Baba Ajit Singh's body. And Guru Sahib's response in that moment, this is his own son, his firstborn child. And Guru Sahib's response in that moment was, if you are going to cover Ajit Singh's body, make sure that you have enough. Make sure that you have enough others to cover the bodies of all of my Sikhs who have given their Shahidi.
So there's a hand up. It went down. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Do you want to
Yeah, we'll touch on that question in a second.
So there's a written question. Can you share real life examples of how Gurmukhs handle tough situations? Absolutely, we have those coming up.
We have those coming up. Yeah. So Guru Gobind Singh Ji is not that Guru Gobind Singh Ji didn't love his son. It's that he loved all of his children equally. Is that each of his Sikhs were just as important to him as Baba Ajit Singh and Baba Jujhar Singh. So that's what the Guru is asking of you. Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is not asking of you to be this uncaring, removed person who's not interested in the world. This is the same Guru who's one of his first acts as a Guru, one of his first acts as a young child was to feed poor people langar, right? So the Guru is very committed to social change, to helping people, to being there for people. Being disconnected doesn't mean that you are above other people. It means that you are able to have perspective. It means that you're able to understand when things happen that that's not the end of the world for you. And this second last line of this Pori is really powerful because a Gurmukh is a person that not only saves themselves so that they are able to liberate themselves and others. And Nanak Gurmukh Sabad Nisatare, that all this happens through the Shabad. So this isn't something we've talked about yet, but a lot of what the yogis were essentially talking about was the idea that we should be immersed in piri, in spiritual concerns. And Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is pushing back and saying, no, we need to have a balance between these. This idea of two separate things doesn't exist. They are actually one and the same. And Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is really looking at a holistic viewpoint. So you keep connected while you engage with the world, but changing the world while remaining gently aloof. So you change the world, but you are not changed by the world. So this is very important.
Do you want to explain the picture?
This is just an old painting from a Janmsakhi of Sidh Gosti, of what their interpretation of Sidh Gosti was.
And when we use pictures, they're not accurate, they're not likeness, they're just aids to help you in your imagination.
Yes, they're just teaching tools. We don't know what the Guru Sahibs actually look like, of course. Our first example of a Gurmukh will be Mata Gujji. This on the top there is a signature of Mata Gujji from her Hukamnama that she issued. She was given the authority to issue Hukamname, which usually is something that only the Gurus were able to do. And her Hukamnama is, you can find it in Dr. Ganda Singh's book, Hukamname. And you can see the Hukamnama that she wrote. So Mata Gujri was Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji's wife, and Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji's mother, and the mother of the Sahibzade. But more than being a mother and a grandmother, she was also a leader in the community. She was an advisor, and she was an administrator. In those long years after Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji became Guru, between Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji becoming Guru and Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji becoming Guru, in that time, Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji was at Bakala, at what we now call Baba Bakala. And while he was at Bakala, it was Mata Gujri who was running the house. So that's really the first place where we want to look at is her leadership skills. Her skills as a administrator really began on a small scale within the family, where it was her mother-in-law, Mata Nanaki, and her husband, Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji. He wasn't Guru at that time, of course. But once Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji became Guru, Mata Gujri took on a really important role in the community. She became an advisor to the Guru, and she was an administrator in the Guru. In the Guru's Divan, from Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji onwards, the Gurus held a formal court, like an emperor runs a court, because the Guru is such a Badshah. And the Gurus would hold a court, and at their court, they would make decisions, and they would issue Hukamname, and they would receive Sikhs and so forth. And they would also receive administrators. Sorry, not administrators. They'd receive ambassadors from other regimes, for example. So if the Mughal government wanted to send somebody to talk to the gurus, they would have to come to the guru's court. And in each guru's court, there was a divan, which meant prime minister or minister. And the divan in Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji's court and in Guru Gobind Singh Ji's court at the beginning was Mata Gujri. She was a divan, she was administrator of the court of the Guru. So when people wanted to come and talk to Guru Gobind Singh Ji, they had to talk to Mata Gujri first. When people wanted to ask Guru Gobind Singh Ji something, they had to go to Mata Ji first, and she was a route to Guru Sahib Ji. She was in charge when the Mughals wanted to hold negotiations for the evacuation of Anandpur Sahib, when the Pahari Raje wanted to come and talk to Guru Gobind Singh Ji, they came via Mata Gujri as well. So a lot of times the roles of women in Sikh history are diminished, ignored, and also largely forgotten. So there are many women in Sikh history that had really impressive roles in the Panth, but those roles are sometimes not remembered because the people who write history are, of course, many times or almost all times men. And I'll give you another example of this unrelated to Mata Gujri, but it's an example I like to use, which is one of the first historians in Sikh history was Bibi Rup Kaur. And Bibi Rup Kaur was the adopted daughter of Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji. And Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji trained her as a scholar, and she wrote the histories of the early gurus. We don't have her history anymore. It was destroyed sometime in the last, 300 years, 400 years. But the fact that Guru Sahib Ji, A, adopted a girl, B, raised her to be a scholar, C, promoted her work, that shows what the role of women could be at that time in Sikh history. So we're not going to pretend that things were equal or totally egalitarian in the way that we might expect them or hope for them to be. But one thing that we can say from Sikh history, and the same issue comes up with caste as well, is that regardless of your caste or your gender, there were no roles that were not open to you. There might not have been, tons of administrators who were women, but in Guru Amar Das Ji's Darbar, there were many women who were administrators. Maybe not an equal amount as the men, but there were some. Same way with Guru Gobind Singh Ji's time, there may not have been a lot of divans or people in the court, but Mata Gujri was the Mukh Divan, and she was in charge of the court. Later on, that role fell to Bayemi Singh, actually. And after Mata Gujri got older in age and retired from that role, she fulfilled that role more when Guru Gobind Singh Ji was younger. And let's think about what Mata Gujri went through in her life. She struggled to have a child for many years, which is a struggle that many people can really relate to. She finally had a child when she was in her mid-40s, which is very old for that time. It's, old for nowadays as well. And she had one child, and that was Guru Gobind Singh Ji. And soon after the birth of her child, when he's only 9 years old, she loses her husband. Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji gives himself up for Shahidi. Then she's with Guru Gobind Singh Ji at Anandpur Sahib, but she knows that difficult times are going to come for the Panth ahead. And she has her grandchildren that she helps raise, the Char Sahibzade. And here's where this comes back to Sidh Gosti. She is able to keep that balance between connection to Nam and Bani and being immersed in the politics and military affairs of the Sikh state and not being affected by them, keeping her center. How centered could she be? Well, we see at the end of her life that even in the Thanda Burj, when she is 88 years old. Now, I want us to imagine an 88-year-old woman having fallen into the river, the Sarsa River, freezing cold river at the end of December in Punjab, and barely saves her 2 grandchildren, but manages to bring them to safety, then walks for 3 or 4 days through the jungle, then gets arrested, gets taken to this high up prison where the wind is so biting. And those of you who have been to Punjab in the winter know how cold it gets, especially without insulation, without windows, and high up like that. And Mata Gujri, in those difficult nights with the Chote Sahibzade in the Thanda Burj, she is completely unconcerned for herself. Her connection to Bani is so strong that all she is focused on is preparing her grandchildren for Shahidi, is making sure that they are strong, that they remember the stories of their great-grandfather, Guru Arjan Sahib Ji, that they remember the stories of their grandfather, Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, that they remember the stories of their father, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and that they stay brave in the situation that's about to come. She was under no illusions that her grandchildren would survive this encounter. But her purpose was not to be afraid, not to fill her grandchildren with fear, but to fill them with hope and courage and dignity and strength. And she was able to do that. So that's what it means to live in the world and live separate from it. She was able to put her physical needs below her. I mean, she was barely hanging on physically in terms of what her body was capable of holding on to. And that's why after the Shahidi of the Sahibzade, she passed away, because she had just been living long enough to see them through their Shahidi. Like, she wanted to make sure that her children passed the test, and they passed the test of Shahidi.
I think it's really important. Like, when I was growing up and learning about Mata Gujri, that was all I learned, was that she was, she had a lot of mamta, she had a lot of love, that she gave a lot of sikha to her son and her grandsons. And this other part of her life was never shared with me, that she was political. And I remember reading something where Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj is making a decision and he consults with her. And I was like, what? Like, it caught me off guard. I hadn't seen her signature on a Hukamnama. I didn't know she prepared military leaders, ran a divan, made political decisions. She was never shown to me as young. She was never shown to me as militant. She was never shown to me as political. And to learn that about her, it's so important that we know that old woman in that Thanda Burj, who is such an incredible mother and grandmother and sense of warmth and strength, and is able to send this Chote Sahibzade to their Shahidi with pride. And then it's also so important to know that she had all of these other sides as well. Very powerful.
Yeah, what Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is talking about with the yogis is not an easy task, which is why he says it's like chewing iron. And this wasn't an easy task what Mata Gujri did. Just the end of her life alone would be more than most of us can handle. But that's really the power of the Gurmukh, the ability to save themselves and to save others, the ability to know when to be connected and when to be disconnected. On the left, we have a painting, a historical painting of what a Bairagi sadhu would have looked like. And on the right, we have a painting of what perhaps Baba Banda Singh Bahadur looked like. And Baba Banda Singh Bahadur was a Bairagi sadhu, very similar to the yogis. A different school, not as yoga interested, but similar. The Bairagi sadhus are similar to the yogis. And Baba Banda Singh Bahadur, his name was of course Madho Das before he became Banda Singh. And he was a Bairagi sadhu for many years. And that's why I wanted to use his example here, because he's literally a person who went through that journey. He went from what Guru Nanak Sahib Ji was saying, going from being a yogi to being a Sikh, going from being disconnected from the world, living in the jungle, being separate from the world, to being fully immersed in the world, but keeping his Sikhi intact, being able to stay connected. And if we look back at Banda Singh Bahadur's life, there's trauma there in his life. And this trauma is what pushed him to this extreme. And being a yogi, being separated from the world is an extreme, Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is teaching us in Sidh Gosti. And the holistic way of living your life, the way of encompassing and bringing together all different parts of your life, that's the Sikh way. That's the Sikh madag, the Sikh panth, the Sikh path. By the way, in the middle, that's Ik Oankar written in Banda Singh Bahadur's hand from one of the 2 Hukamname that we have of his. So Baba Banda Singh Bahadur, as a young child, I forgot what his name was before he became Madhodas, but he was a hunter in Kashmir. He was from a Kashmiri hunting community. And one day he killed a deer, and he went to gut the deer, cut open the stomach of the deer and take out the internal organs, and outspelled all these fetuses of these baby deer. And they kind of moved around a little bit and then died slowly. His name was Lakshman Dev when he was younger. Thank you, Jaspreet. And he was so horrified at having killed these little innocent baby deer that he's like, that's it, I'm done. I'm done with the world. I'm going to go become a sadhu. And he just left the world and became a sadhu for the next 20 years of his life. From a young boy up until his late 20s, early 30s, he was just a sadhu in the jungle, traveling around India. Until he meets Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji, and Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji sees in him some potential. I want you to think about this. We have Baba Deep Singh, we have Bhai Mani Singh, we have Mata Kaur, we have Bhai Daya Singh, we have Bhai Dharm Singh. We have all of these incredible Sikh warriors and leaders alive at the time. And when Guru Gobind Singh Ji gives the job of leading the Khalsa army back to Punjab, he chooses Banda Singh Bahadur, someone who had only been a Sikh for 2 months at that time. So Guru Gobind Singh Ji saw in Banda Singh Bahadur something very unique, a potential for something, the ability to be able to really bring together these 2 extremes into one person and to form a balance. And if we look at Baba Banda Singh Bahadur's life, it really is about a balance, about striking a balance. It's about ruling without being a ruler, so that he is in charge of territory, but he doesn't rule in his name. He issues coins in the name of Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji. He goes into villages. He doesn't take over villages. He doesn't oppress people. He gets rid of the zamindars, and he gives people their own land so that they can be their own masters. So he liberates people. So he takes over by liberation. He rules by not ruling. This is Banda Singh Bahadur living that Sidh Gosti ideal, that ability to be in the world and to be separate from the world at the same time. Now, Banda Singh Bahadur is a little bit of a difficult figure in Sikh history. Some historians are a little bit more negative on him. Some are more positive on him. I think if you look at the large scale of things, is that the reality is that he was a human being. He was not a guru. And it is likely that he made mistakes, and that he may have made some serious mistakes in terms of his relationship with the rest of the Panth. There seems to have been some type of conflict there with other leaders in the Panth. And whether that was all his fault or other people's fault, it's difficult to say. This is not a presentation on Banda Singh Bahadur's political ideology or history, so we're not going to get into that right now. But when we were talking about Baba Banda, one thing that I always found very fascinating about Baba Banda Singh Bahadur was the inability of the Mughal Empire to understand how he was able to do what he did. Within about 5 months of entering Punjab, he had liberated more than half of Punjab from Mughal rule. He had defeated Sarhind, defeated Vizier Khan, and he had taken over almost all of Punjab. And within the next year, he had taken over almost all of Punjab. He took over the whole Majha area after that. He was able to make huge inroads into taking over Punjab within a matter of months. And the Mughals didn't understand this. They didn't understand the revolutionary power of Sikhi. They didn't understand the empowerment that Sikhi gives people, that if you give people the message that they are worthwhile, that they are worthy of responsibility and of ruling themselves, that they will rise up and fight back. So, and this is why the Mughal government at first didn't take Banda Singh Bahadur seriously, because he came to Punjab with a force of maybe 200-300 soldiers, like a tiny force of people. And yet he was able to enact big change because the army just kept growing and growing and growing as people were inspired and became Khalsa. And it's really amazing. They never went into villages and said, hey, you take Amrit, become a Khalsa. People would see them and say, oh, wow, if we receive Amrit and we become like you, like we can become like the Khalsa, we can go around and free ourselves and free others and fight back against the government. And people were inspired and they rose up and they joined up and they created this huge revolutionary movement. At the end of Baba Banda Singh Bahadur's life, he was stuck in the fort at Gurdas-Nangal, and it was a horrible situation. The Mughal government had them surrounded, and they were trapped in there for months without food, and it was a really dire situation, but they refused to surrender. The Mughals were still, even when finally the Sikhs were so weak that they couldn't pick up their own talwars anymore. The Mughals were so afraid of the Sikhs that when they came inside, they were cowering from the Sikhs because they thought that the Sikhs had magic powers. They thought that Banda Singh Bahadur had magic powers and that he would use these magic powers to destroy them. And when they captured him, they handcuffed his hands and feet to a metal base and put it on top of an elephant, and then had his neck chained to his feet, and then had someone standing with a sword behind him ready to cut off his head if he tried anything, because they were so certain that even though he was emaciated and almost dead and so weak that he had magic powers, that there was no other way that Sikhs would have been able to rule Punjab so quickly. They didn't understand that the real magic, the real miracle of Sikhi was a message of Guru Nanak Sahib Ji, that was a real miracle. And when Baba Banda Singh Bahadur was taken to Delhi, the Mughals wanted to make an example of him, of what he had done. He had taken over Delhi, parts of Haryana. He had come close to Delhi, in fact, and he had really terrified the Mughal government. And so they wanted to make an example of him. They were cutting off the heads of Sikhs for 2 weeks straight and hanging the bodies of Sikhs on trees outside of the city. So anybody entering Delhi would know this is what happens when you become a Sikh. And they were putting the heads of Sikhs on pikes around the city and hanging their bodies around from lamps and lampposts around the city. And Baba Banda Singh Bahadur, they brought him out, and he had an infant child whose name was Ajit Singh. And they took Ajit Singh and they cut open his chest and they ripped out his heart and they shoved his heart into Banda Singh Bahadur's face, into his mouth. And I can't imagine, when my children were little and they fell, it would hurt to see them fall and start to cry. Like, it would be an emotional reaction to see them in pain, or when they're sick and they're not able to care for themselves and they're looking for you for comfort, how difficult it is. And Banda Singh Bahadur was able to, in that moment, stay completely connected to Vaheguru and stay totally aloof from what was the horrible things that were happening to him. Just in the way that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji explained in Sidh Gosti. And they cut off Banda Singh Bahadur's feet, his hands, and then finally they blinded him. and then they cut off his head. And they say, and we know this not just from our own records, because sometimes we don't believe our own records when we hear them. We like to hear it, if somebody else says it, then it feels more real. There were Europeans there in Delhi at the time. There were a British ambassador there, and there were Jesuit ministers there from Goa, and they were eyewitnesses to what happened to Banda Singh Bahadur. And they said that not one Sikh, including Banda Singh Bahadur, cried out even once. Not one Sikh begged for their life. Not one Sikh screamed in pain. That's what their connection was, that in the midst of horrible physical pain, they were able to maintain their connection to their Sikhi. And for our last example, I wanted to get a little bit more modern, and we're going to wrap up after this example. So we're going to be talking about Bayemi Singh. Oh, I forgot to put Singh in his name there. Sorry about that. Bayemi Singh and here you can see some other important figures from the early 1980s. So you have on the right-hand side, Baba Jarnail Singh, who is the overall leader of the Panthik movement. And the movement was, of course, to get the Anandpur Sahib resolution implemented, which was the Dharmyudh Morcha. To the right of Bayemi Singh, you have the head of the women's wing of the All India Sikh Students Federation. Her name is Bibi Kaur. And you have below her by Harminder Singh Sandhu. And to the right, you have Surinder Singh Sodhi and by Manveer Singh Cheru. So these are all young leaders of the Panth at the time. The All India Sikh Students Federation was started as the youth wing of the Akali Dal in the 1930s. And it was sort of where Akali Dal politicians in India would go when they were in college and university. They would work in the AISSF, and they would work through there. And then after being president of the All India Sikh Students Federation, they would move on to positions within the Akali Dal. But the organization had become really moribund by the late 1970s. There were not that many people joining it. There were not a lot of people engaged in it. Students were disaffected from it. And in 1978, Bayemi Singh was elected head of the All India Sikh Students Federation. He was the son of Sant Kartar Singh, a really powerful figure who had been one of the leaders of the Sikh protests against Indira Gandhi's national emergency in 1975. If I'm explaining and going through a lot of historical dates and information and events and figures that you're not totally clear on, I apologize. There's a lot of this history that we should be better aware of, that we need to educate ourselves on a little bit more so that we know about our recent history and why we're in the situation we are in today. For example, you can't really understand the Kisan Morcha unless you really understand what happened in the 1970s and 80s. And so I'll try to explain everything as much as possible, but we don't have a lot of time to get into it. But the reason why I wanted to use Bayemi Singh as an example was that he was someone who came from this very traditional religious Sant sort of background, where people were not very politically active, where people were engaged much more in doing Path and Bani, and people were much more into not being involved politically in the world. And he took that power and momentum and created a youth movement. And the membership in the All India Sikh Students Federation went up hundreds of percent in within 2 years of him becoming president. So by 1981 or 82, there were 100,000 members of the All India Sikh Students Federation, whereas in the early 70s and mid 70s, there were as few as 10,000. So he was able to increase the membership of the All India Sikh Students Federation by a huge amount. And they were able to do this by capturing that power of figures like Baba Jarnail Singh and marrying them with figures like Bhai Harminder Singh Sandhu, so like intellectuals like Bibi Akbar, people who were academics, people who were, Amik Singh himself was a master's student in English studies. These were educated, well-educated, intelligent, young leaders, and they were bringing together that sort of spiritual focus and bringing together political focus and marrying them together to create a powerful movement. And this powerful movement had a huge impact in Punjab. All across Punjab and even outside of Punjab, there started to be local chapters of the All India Sikh Students Federation in every college and every university. They started to hold Gurmukh camps. They started to hold Akhand Paths. They started to hold Samagams. They would hold everywhere that this movement erupted, they would bring together students and engage them with Sikhi, and at the same time also engage them politically, to be involved in the political struggles and the situations that were taking part in Punjab at the time. So that's really powerful. It's a blueprint for how, if we want to have a movement with youth today, how to run such a movement, how to organize such a movement. I think Bayemi Singh is a really good example of how to do that. And you can see that, again, it was not equal gender-wise, but there were women in leadership positions. So it was not exclusive. It was inclusive, not as inclusive as it should have been. And we always have to work as a bunch to work towards being more and more inclusive, but it was not completely exclusive either. So this was a movement where people of different castes, people of different genders, people of different economic abilities were a part of them together. And it's pretty amazing that in 84, in the attack on Harmandir Sahib and the Battle of Amritsar that happened, then most of the people who got shaheed were members of either the Damdami Taksal or the All India Sikh Students Federation. These were college students who gave up their lives to defend the Akal Takht and Harmandir Sahib. Now, what happened to the movement after 84, the infighting that has been happening in the movement since then, those are all other issues, and a lot of that has to do with government interference and other more complex questions that we can get into perhaps in a future webinar or something. But I wanted to talk about the inspirational part of it right now, which was that idea of taking a movement from 10,000 to 100,000 and building a movement based on Sikh principles, but engaging with politics, so that people were going to Akhand Paths, but they were also going out and protesting the laws of the government, so that they were doing samagams for kirtan, but they were also engaged in letter writing campaigns against the governments, for example. So this sort of political and religious connection that they were able to forge. And I think that brings us up to the end of the history part.
So you saw in these examples a lot of what, there's like a whole section on what in Sidh Gosti, Guru Nanak Dev Ji goes on and on about what Gurmukh is. And we picked a few of those lines and we shared them with you. And those are the ones we were asking you to return to as you were listening to some of these Sakhis, so you can start to undo those ideas that you're either or. You're political or you're spiritual. I think one of the really beautiful things you touched on is that the Siddhs were chasing powers, we're chasing magic, we're chasing this is the path. These are the schools, and then this is like ikbanta, like this is our path that we have refined, and this is the right way of doing it. And we see that like education and being of the people are not dichotomies. Isolation and being in the world are not dichotomies. Being spiritual and being political are not dichotomies. And that Sikhs are not chasing magic, which I think is really important as well, because when you talk about Baba Banda Singh Bahadur and the fact that he went through all of this, he wasn't able to do it because, oh, you know, he's magical. So if he's tortured and if his kid is tortured in front of him, he can leave this earth and he can fly up to the clouds and he can be with God and he doesn't feel anything. It's quite the opposite. It's that he feels more thoroughly. He has died, Agan Mare Satgur ke Pane. He has died in that fire. He has accepted, and he is now in the world. So he was fully present for that moment, and wasn't chasing the magic that would have allowed him to mentally escape that moment, but was fully present. And I think that's what makes these Gurmukhs have that balance. So this is captured really beautifully. We're going to look at Party 5. So, Jaise Jal, and this, I think this captures everything that we were talking about today. Jaise Jal mein kamal niralam murgai ne sane. Like the lotus is in the water and the murgai, the duck, is in the stream. When you see a duck in water, it's in the water, but it's not wet. Like you could put a drop of water, it would roll off its back, and you see a lotus and it's like physically in the water, but it's beautiful and it's above the water and it's completely different from the mud that it's in. So like that lotus or like that duck, Surat Sabad Pav Sagar Tariya Nanak Naam Bakhane. Connect to the Naam with conscious absorbed in the Shabd, thus cross the world ocean. So that connection to Bani is what's going to make you be that duck in the water that's in the water but not getting wet, or that lotus that's in the mud but isn't dirty. Rehe ekant eko man vasya asa mahi niraso. This is such a beautiful concept. With Vaheguru lodged within, remain unattached and desireless among desire. So asa mahi niraso, to be unattached, to be without hopes and dreams and desires, but not isolated. In asamahi, to live in that world and to be surrounded by those desires. And then in that world where you're surrounded by those desires, to be like, no, not for me. So rehe ekant eko man vasya asamahi niraso agam agochar dekh dekhaya nanak taan ka daso. Nanak is a slave to them who have the vision of the unapproachable and unknowable and grant it to others. Dekh, so agam agochar, you see that unapproachable. Unknowable, dekh dekhaye. So you see and you show others. Dekh dekhaye, and then Nanak is a slave to that person. So that's the main crux of what we wanted to share with you today, is that idea that you be in the world, but not of the world, be surrounded by asa, be surrounded by hopes and desires, but be niras, be without them, to be that duck in the water, but not wet, to be that lotus, to be in the mud, but not be muddy. So we will stop our share there. And if you have any questions, we're gonna ask that you put up your hand and we will unmute you and you can ask your question or feel free to type it in the chat. And if there are no questions, then we'll just revisit the handout for a few minutes. Oh, Tavarikh. Okay, yes. So there's a question that says, can you explain Tavarikh?
It just means history.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sikhi has come up with this really beautiful way of trying to understand an idea. So let's say we have a social problem. The social problem is, for example, do Sikhs support capital punishment? So you want to come to an answer about that question. How do you come to an answer about capital punishment? Well, you look at it from three things. You look at Bani, so you look at what Guru Granth Sahib Ji says, and secondarily, you can use Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Bani, Bhai Gurdas, Bhai Nandal Ji's Bani, but primarily Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Secondly, you can use Tavarikh, which is Sikh history, so examples from Sikh Itihas. And third, you use Sikh Rit, so Sikh lifestyle, our rules in the way that we function. And then you can say, what do all three of these things say about this topic? So that's what we're trying to do about Sidh Gosti. So that's what the word Tavarikh was. Sorry we didn't explain that earlier.
We got another question. Can you share more of the meaning? Sorry, we're getting these directly in case folks can't see them. More on the meaning of dekh dikhaye. So that shows up in the line, agam agochar dekh dikhaye, nanak tanka daso. So Professor Sahib Singh says, for the folks who don't speak Punjabi, I will explain in English as well. ਅਜਿਹੇ ਜੀਵਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਜੋ ਮਨੁੱਖ ਅਗੰਮ ਤੇ ਅਗੋਚਰ ਪ੍ਰਭੂ ਦਾ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੋਰਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਨਾਨਕ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਦਾਸ ਹੈ. So dekh is to see yourself, dikhai is to show someone else. So when I see, it's dekh, ਮੈਂ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦੇਖੀ ਸੀ, I saw. When I show Santbir, oh look, ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦਿਖਾਇਆ. So dekh dikhai is to Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, I am a slave to that person who has seen, and in this case, seen would be understood and known. Because physically understanding and seeing Vaheguru is one way of knowing Vaheguru, and then there's a lot of other ways as well. So to completely understand that Vaheguru, and then to share that with the Sangat that you're in and with the other people that you're in as well. That's the kind of Gurmukh that Guru Nanak Dev Ji is going to bow down in front of.
So I can touch on this. Somebody had a question: how do you stay a Gurmukh in an office, corporate setting, where profits are more important than the human cost, and when one needs to earn a living at the same time? So this question has a few different responses. I think first thing, there's nothing wrong with earning money or even being profitable in earning money. We have Sikhs in Sikh history who were very wealthy, like by Makhan Shah Lamarna or by Lakhi Shah. But each of those figures, by Makhan Shah and by Lakhi Shah, were able to give it up in a moment's notice for the fund. So that's the first thing, is are you connected to this money you're making? Secondly, the Svand is really important when it comes to these issues. Because what the Svand does is that 1/10 in Sikh Ityas and Sikh memory, what we say is that it makes the rest of the 9/10 pavitra. It cleans the rest of the money that you're making. And if you are giving 1/10 to the Svand, then you are being an active citizen in the world. You're helping the world. So your money is doing good. So that's the second thing that's very important, is the Svand. And the third thing that is really important is don't work for corporations that are doing active harm in the world. So if you are working for a weapons manufacturer that is making bombs that you know are going to be sold to Israel to bomb Palestinian homes, then you have to ask yourself, should I be working in this profession, or should I be working for this corporation? As much as possible, you should be trying to work in situations that are doing harm. And I know that's very difficult in a very complex world that we live in, but it's not always totally completely possible. But to actively not engage in harm should be the focus. Somebody asked, when with the Svand should we be giving just to Sikh causes? So if we look historically at the Svand, it was for Sikh causes, for Panthic causes. It was to help the Panth sustain itself. But at the same time, Guru Sahib Ji says, Griban the Guru di Golak, that the poor person's mouth is a Guru's Golak. So either supporting Panthic causes should be important, but parts of your Svand can also go to helping those in need, because for Guru Sahib, that's also helping the Panth.
Okay, and I think we're at time. Just thank you all so much for letting us share a little bit of our Sikhi with you. We are students on this journey. We've made mistakes. Please forgive us. Let us know if we made mistakes. We'll work on it. We'll keep correcting ourselves so we can do this better. Anything else?
No, forgive us for our mistakes. I always make mistakes with dates and numbers, and it's not as fun anymore because everyone can just check the internet right away and correct me, which is good. But apologies for all of that. We hope you enjoy the rest of the week. We've really been enjoying taking part as well.
I'd like to thank Jaspreet, Kaur, and Santbir Singh for that presentation today on Tavarikh. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.